What's going on, guys? K-Pine here, and welcome back. After playing quite a few sets in the Mountain Cup, I kept noticing that ice types, specifically on the lead, were everywhere. Along with the presence of Firefang Mawile, I thought it was time to bring out an unconventional mon in this cup, in Quagsire. Quagsire is just an absolute beast in the Zero Shield, since it has only nuke moves, which very often give you shield advantage or switch advantage, of which this backline absolutely thrives off of. I actually threw this team together just for fun and to see what would happen because I'm extremely weak to Razor Leaf on the lead. However, most teams that have a Razor Leafer don't run it on the lead. Plus, in general, they're not really that common, so it wasn't that much of a problem at all. And let me tell you, this team ended up performing a lot better than I ever expected, and I had some great battles along the way. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Quagsire into Lapras. Already seen that ice type on the lead. My opponents can immediately swap into their Gliscor, and we are going to meet it with Froslass. Now, Froslass can tank a Night/Slash no problem, but it cannot take a second one. So we're going to load up, throw this Avalanche on the CMP tie, force my opponent to give up a shield, or let their Gliscor go. And in this scenario, they actually end up giving a shield, and that's great for me because now I can shield up this Night/Slash, Powder Snow all the way down, and get to a Shadow Ball against this Lapras. So Shadow Ball comes through. This can do some big damage onto the Lapras. My opponent lets it through. They want to save their shield for the potential Stone Edge from the Quagsire. They're going to swap out into a Whiscash, and I'm going to throw off this Earthquake of my own before dipping into my own Whiscash. Which, since I do actually end up getting their final shield, I'm going to load up on energy, bank the Stone Edge, so that now I have it for the Lapras, and swap back into my own Whiscash, of which I end up catching a Mud Bomb as well. So we are in a pretty decent position here, because now we can start spamming off these Mud Bombs of our own in return, bringing their Whiscash down to about 50% health. And they actually go for the nuke move of the Blizzard. It's just not enough to take me out. And they can't quite farm down yet either. So they are going to have to throw another Mud Bomb. Which they actually store energy, which is a very nice play by them. And switch back into their Lapras to soak this Mud Bomb's worth of energy. And because they know that they're going to have to tank a Stone Edge anyways. So very nice play by them. However, we are able to take out that Lapras, and we are still not quite in a range where a Blizzard will be able to take us out, as we do get to a move in time. They are going to be able to get off the Blizzard here. Quagsire tanks that like a champ, and we get to this Earthquake to take out the Whiscash for a good game. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into Escav. This is a dominant lead for the Quagsire in the Zero Shield scenario because we essentially one-shot that Escav with the Earthquake. And I actually like to let the Escav throw first because if they go for the Mega Horn, Quagsire just barely survives it and can get off the Earthquake. If they go for the Draw Run like they do here, you actually have the option of baiting the Stone Edge or going straight for the Earthquake. Honestly, it's a pretty safe bait in this situation because the Escav is pretty much guaranteed to shield because they have to respect that nuke and allows you to, subsequently get to another move and one less fast move turn, which could be very, very helpful in the end. But either way, my opponent's going to swap into their Whiscash. I meet it with my Froslass. I'm able to take it out with an Avalanche. And they have a Water Gun Lapras in the back. And this is going to be a very close game. Fortunately for us, Whiscash is very bulky and very spammy. So we do stand a decent chance here. My Quagsire is on very low health. So I'm going to save it for a potential sack swap in the endgame. And bring in my Whiscash. I know I'm going to have to tank a Surf at some point in this match. So I just let it be the first one, saving both of my shields until I absolutely need to use them, which would be right here. So the Surf from the Lapras does get my first shield. I'm loading up on energy, almost at the back-to-back Mud Bombs when I throw off my first one. This does take out the Lapras. They actually let it go. So now my opponent's putting it all on their Escav, and Escav definitely doesn't appreciate these Mud Bombs from the Whiscash. The first Mud Bomb's gonna get the shield. I'm gonna load up, over farm, and I'm able to catch onto my Quagsire. And now this gives us a big chance in the game. So I'm going to throw this Mud Bomb off right away. I'm hoping this is going to do just enough to take out the Escav. Not quite enough. And it's a Simul KO. Very, very good match from my opponent right there. GG's to him. Heading into the next match, we see another Ice type on the lead, but this one in Shadow Lapras. And interesting enough, this one's actually running Ice Shard. Almost all of the Laprases you'll see are running Water Gun to help with that fast move pressure, since Escav, which is its main counter, Water Gun does a lot better against, as well as against the Frostlasses it can come up across. But in this situation, my opponent does shield the Stone Edge, so in return, I will shield up so I can actually land a Stone Edge. Then my opponent swaps into Escav to try and catch a Stone Edge. But either way, whether I throw the Stone Edge or the Earthquake, it's going to do so much damage to the Escavalier as it goes down. I swap in my Whiscash, get a nice Mud Shot down. My opponent's going to bring their Lapras, making sure I'm throwing on good timings here. 4 Mud Shots to 3 Ice Shards. And that's going to bring their Shadow Lapras down into the red. I can still survive the Surf, no problem. So I'm going to let that go. I'm going to overfarm, go for this Mud Bomb right before they get to their next Surf. Unfortunately, wasn't able to farm down in time, but that is alright, as they have a Fire Fang Mawile in the back. And because I'm able to get off this last Mud Bomb, that's going to get their final shield. So now I can bring in my Froslass and safely reach the Shadow Ball. They do get a pup, they're going to ramp up that Fire Fang damage, but Froslass, with shields down, just going to be able to finish off this Mawile, no problem with the Shadow Ball, and that is a good game. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into Shadow Mawile. This is another fantastic lead for us. If our opponent swaps out, you don't have to swap out yourself because you still have that Whiscash. But in this case, my opponent's staying in, and they're actually going to swap out to catch an Earthquake onto their Whiscash of their own. So nice catch by them. However, Whiscash definitely doesn't appreciate that EQ. I now swap in the Froslass to deal with the rest of the Whiscash, because my thinking here is I don't want this Froslass to potentially get aligned with the Shadow Mawile. When in reality, I should have just stayed in with the Quag. With the energy lead that they gave me, I would be able to guarantee alignment in getting my own Whiscash onto their Shadow Mawile by just matching shields from there on out with my opponent, and then having my Froslass deal with whatever their third Pokemon is. And since they're leading Shadow Mawile, it's most likely weak to a Froslass, potentially a Gliscor. But in this case, I do bring in my Whiscash, and it ends up being a Froslass. So instead of playing the bait game with their Froslass, we are able to deal with it with our Whiscash, and we're still in a pretty decent position because of Mud Bomb spam plus the little bit of an energy head start they gave us while staying in with their Mawile. So since that Mud Bomb does end up getting their first shield from their Frost, I will combo play into it with my Quag, get their final shield, force my opponent to waste their energy right here. And I actually end up throwing a shield up because I know I can outpace this Froslass to another Stone Edge, which takes it out. And then from here on out, I should have no problem closing out this game. And my opponent realizes that and concedes. GG's to them. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into Froslass. Another fantastic lead for us. See what my opponent wants to do. They're going to stay in, and they're going to throw off an Avalanche. And again, I'm going to let this go. Quagsire can take an Avalanche, no problem. And now from here, the Froslass would be able to farm us down by committing shields, but if they commit shields, then that just perfectly opens it up for my Frost to sweep in the back. And if you'll notice, right before I throw that Stone Edge, I pause, wait for that Powder Snow to come through so my opponent doesn't catch, and they try to. So we're able to hold on to that energy, meet this Diggersby with our Froslass, and absolutely ruin its day. As we Powder Snow down, we do go down a shield, but we have a ton of energy, so we will guaranteed be able to get that shield back from my opponent. My opponent brings back in their Froslass. I'm going for the Avalanche bait. I'm banking on the fact that they're going to shield to preserve their HP, which they do. And from here, I'm going to let this go. Froslass did its job. It got one of their shields, so now I can bring in my Quagsire, who is almost at 2 Stone Edges. This one will get their final shield if they want to preserve their Frost, which they do. And now I could shield up and get to another Stone Edge, which I do right here. But this time, because I was low on health, I got impatient. I should have waited to see that one turn go through. But they end up catching it on an Escav, which again, doesn't appreciate these nuke moves from the Quag. So I bring in my Whiscash, outpace to the Mud Bomb, take it out. This now allows me to get to quite another Mud Bomb against the Froslass. Whiscash is so spammy with the Mud Shot Mud Bomb combo, able to output a lot of damage very, very quickly. Frost goes for the Shadow Ball, not quite enough to take me out. And we are able to get to one final Mud Bomb to take out their Frost for a good game. GG's. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into another Froslass. See what my opponent wants to do in this one. If they're going to stay in or swap out, they're staying in as well. So just like last time, we are going to let this Avalanche through. Now we're going to throw this Stone Edge. This will take out the Froslass if they let it through, but most likely it will get a shield, which it does. And here, again, a little impatient. Another nice catch from my opponent onto their Diggersby. But that is perfectly okay, because I can bring in my Froslass. I can tank one Fire Punch, throw off this Avalanche on the CMP tie to their next Fire Punch. And this is enough damage to take out the bulky Diggersby. Diggersby goes down. Back in comes her Froslass, and here an Avalanche isn't about gonna just be enough to take us out. But I still will shield it because we have all of this energy on a Froslass. And I'm up this much energy, no need to bait. My opponent actually gives up their final shield here. I'm wondering what they could have in the back that they're wanting to preserve their Froslass this much. Potentially Gliscor. So I'm just going to throw off the Shadow Ball right away. Get it on out of here. Froslass goes down. And it's an Escav. And this game is over. Because I can swap into my Whiscash. Throw off this Mud Bomb as soon as I get it. The Escav is going to go for a Mega Horn, which will do so much damage. But Whiscash will be able to tank it. Hang on. And give the killing blow to the Escav for a GG's. Well played to my opponent in this one. Next match, we lead Quagsire into Shadow Lapras. Quagsire just catching all the good leads with all these ice types running around. And this Lapras is actually running Water Gun, as most are. And I overfarm here just in case they try and go for the catch, which they do not. They are going to instead fire off a Surf. I will let that go as Quagsire can easily tank it. We are going to fire off this Stone Edge for massive damage against their Lapras. Outpace them to this next Stone Edge, which either going to get their first shield or have their Lapras go down. And they decide to let their Lapras go down and opt for farm on their Berserker instead. Another very spicy pick in this cup, but unfortunately for the Berserker, we have a Whiscash waiting in the back to meet it. They do land a close combat, and they swap into a Shadow Gliscor, and unfortunately my backline just RPS'd his backline. But the game's not quite over yet, because that Berserker did have quite a bit of energy, so we are going to need to maximize the energy gain on our Froslass by playing to the CMP tie here. And that does get the shield for my opponent. So we are going to need to shield up in return since my Whiscash cannot mudshot down the Gliscor. We are able to farm down the Gliscor. We are one off our next Avalanche, but we should survive a Shadow Claw right there to get it off, which would have guaranteed a shield, and then Whiscash could have closed out the game. My opponent recognized that, so they conceded. GG's to them. Anyways, next match, we lead Quagsire into another Shadow Mawile. My opponent's going to dip into their Whiscash right away. I'm going to throw off this EQ and then dip in my Froslass, when in reality, I should have just stayed in with my Quagsire. Because if my opponent wants to flip switch, or take switch advantage, I should say, they're going to have to give up both shields. And as we saw earlier in the video, Froslass does fine against Shadow Mawile when shields are down, because it's able to get to that Shadow Ball to one-shot it. And if they're leading Shadow Mawile, they most likely have a Gliscor in the back, which they do right here. So now we are in a little bit of a tough situation, since my opponent still has 2 shields for this Shadow Gliscor. But we are able to get one with the Stone Edge, so now I can bring in my Whiscash and play the bait game. My opponent does full send the Earthquake. I was calling their Night/baiting, and now this is going to get very, very close. So I can only make it to 1 Blizzard here or 2 Mud Bombs. So I'm going to play it safe because I know my opponent will shield. Go for that Mud Bomb bait, get off this next Mud Bomb for some chip damage, and then hope that Whiscash will be able to close out with a Stone Edge, and that 1 Stone Edge will be able to do just enough damage. It's going to be very, very close. Here my opponent does throw a Night Slash, does get our shield. We're going to fire off this Stone Edge. Hopefully it's going to be enough to take out the Gliscor. It's just not enough, as the Gliscor is able to hang on and get off the EQ for the killing blow. GG's to my opponent. Very, very well played. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into another Lapras. This one, my opponent is staying in again. We are loading up to the Stone Edge. We are over farming. My opponent's going to throw off the Surf. We can take that no problem. Fire off the Stone Edge of our own in return. My opponent lets that through, and we outpace to this next Stone Edge, which will take out their Lapras or force their first shield. It does force their first shield. So now I'm going to swap into my Whiscash right here, as 1 Mud Bomb will take it out. Honestly, in future games, I stayed with my Quagsire because my Quagsire is a fairly high rank. And if your opponent commits to a Water Gun down there, your Quagsire can actually reach a 3rd Stone Edge. It's crazy. But in this match, I switched out into my Whiscash. My opponent brings in a Shadow Gliscor to meet it, and it's not going to appreciate this Blizzard, especially since I was able to successfully bait that Mud Bomb, which takes down the Gliscor. See what my opponent wants to bring in. Back in, they bring in their Lapras. And now here, I could potentially mudshot down this Lapras. This is a very, very tall task, but it is doable. We are just barely able to mudshot down the Lapras. We leave with the Blizzard. My opponent has a Shadow Mawile in the back, but we have 2 Mud Bombs loaded, as the first one does a ton of damage to the Mawile, and the second one will be able to close it out. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into Shadow Gliscor. In this one, I switch right into my Whiscash right away, because I do have the Blizzard to threaten it, but the Gliscor can also hit for an Earthquake and do some massive damage back. Plus, they're able to land that Earthquake and switch into their Escav, but I was just barely able to react in time to get out those Mud Bombs. Honestly, again, with that lead scenario, Quagsire can take an Earthquake, so I like to stay in, throw off that Stone Edge as soon as they get to Earthquake and CMP tie them, because Quagsire loses the CMP tie, but again, you survive that Earthquake, and by CMP tying them, it gives their Gliscor very, very little extra farm. So then you could bring your Froslass in to meet it and play out the game from there. But in this situation, back in comes the Gliscor. We do land the Stone Edge, able to get to a second one, and this second one will get a shield from them. They do get their first shield. We do get their first shield, and I bring in Froslass to try and do as much Powder Snow damage as I possibly can. And my opponent brings in a Lucario, and at this point, there's really not much I can do. Even if I shield that power-up punch, and by somehow I do get to 2 moves, it's only going to be 2 avalanches. And Lucario can survive that no problem. So I go for my win con, I full send the Shadow Ball, but of course my opponent shields it. And this match isn't looking very good for us, as we are forced to shield a power-up punch. We do get to the EQ to take out the Lucario, but unfortunately, the opposing Gliscor just a little too healthy for us to mud shot down. Plus, they had a move. So my opponent with some very, very nice energy management right there. They played that match beautifully. GG's to them. And that is the end of the video. I was seeing Ice type after Ice type on the lead, and just knew it was time to bring out the Quagmeister. And oh boy, did it not disappoint. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.